So I'm going to start by positing a theory for all the agency people in the room. Could be completely wrong with this, but it generally tends to turn out true. That most of us never expected to end up within this world, right? We just kind of landed here. There was some decision that happened at some point in our career that leads us to sort of being within an agency. I think there's very, very few people who, when they're thinking about leaving school, whether that's to go to university or whether to go and get a job, or go, do you know what I want to do? I want to work in an advertising agency. I want to work in digital. And I did some work with some people who work in the career service in schools in Leeds. And it became clear to me that kids, sort of when they're starting to have those career conversations within schools, are getting the same advice that I was getting in sort of the mid-90s. You know, if you're smart or if you're on for some decent grades and you want to get a job that earns good money, you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be an accountant, you want to go to university and you want to do these things. And those things still ring true. You know, they are great jobs and, you know, you probably do need to go to university in order to get them. But nobody's talking to kids in schools about careers in digital, right? I don't think we're doing enough in schools to teach digital skills. I don't think we're talking to kids about the potential that they've got in order to sort of really go out and earn some good money working in an industry like ours very quickly within their careers, if they kind of get into that space. So that kind of creates I think it creates an interesting dynamic within our industry. I mean, if I think of my own personal experience, I did a law degree at university. So when I was 18, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Within a year of I absolutely did not want to be a lawyer, but I thought I'm on this train now, so I'll finish the degree and then the world is my oyster. I then decided I wanted to be a journalist, but I couldn't afford to do the master's degree, so I got a job at the BBC doing subtitles, and that didn't quite get me into sort of becoming the broadcast journalist that I wanted to. And my cousin worked for an agency in Edinburgh, and he was out all the time, having the time of his life. And I thought, that sounds great to me. So I managed to get a job at a media agency. And 16 years later, here I am talking to you all. I've been on the same employment contract for 13 years. And the job that I started at was part of the network. It's been part of this bigger network that I work for now, which is like massive. I flew back in from New York yesterday, having spent a week working on a massive £400 million pitch for a global piece of business, which there's no way I would have thought I'd be doing that a couple of years back, because I'm part of this big business and part of this big network. But the job that I started at was an agency that was partially owned by the network that I work for. It was 50% owned by two stakeholders who'd set it up and were running it reasonably independently with no interference from the bigger business or the bigger network. But they both left school at 16. One got a job as a typist with a media agency, who developed into an account exec and then account manager, account director. The other one started on a YTS scheme back in the 80s with an advertising agency in Bradford, and they got together and said, you know what, we want to start a business. So they started a business in Leeds that was partially owned by this big network. And I got a job 13 years ago working in a small group of about 20 people when I started. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever been given responsibility for like interviewing people and hiring people. And I think what we quickly discovered is actually our market's always been challenged for resource. I know it's quite acute right now. Our market's always been challenged for resource. And we really struggled to find people with experience that we felt were delivering at the level that we wanted them to. We really wanted to set the standards high within our business, and we really struggled to find people who could do that for us. So we began to recruit at entry level and literally start from scratch with people. And to begin with, we were focused on graduates. You know, we were almost exclusively recruiting graduates in, and we would look for people who showed a bit of strong aptitude for the kind of skills we wanted, but had a really good attitude, who were quite entrepreneurial, who were prepared to roll their sleeves up and get stuck in. And even today, most of the people who I still work with today, most of the people that report into me, we recruited as graduates. We brought them in at entry level, and they've been with us, on a journey over 10, 9, 8, 7 years, whatever, that we've developed from that level up into some of the most senior people within our business and organization today. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, as we were being sucked into this big organization, our HR director came to us and said, look, we're cool with you continuing to focus on graduates, but we want you to start thinking about how you can hire apprentices. And we went into that with all the terrible biases that you thought you might have. We thought, what we're going to get with apprentices, is it going to be kids who've left school and don't really know what to do, and the mum and dad are giving them a kick up the arse and telling them that they have to go out and get a job or whatever. And we went into it with completely the wrong attitude. We ran a couple of recruitment processes and we hired 2 apprentices initially. One of them ticked every box for what we thought we were going to get. One of them was absolutely brilliant. You know, he hadn't been to university. He'd left school a year previously, and we taught him everything, and he. And when we went in to do our next round of apprentice recruitment, our old HR director said something which has kind of stuck with me ever since, which was, when you're thinking about hiring apprentices versus hiring graduates, you've just got to have the right expectations in terms of what you go into it with. The first thing is, apprentices can come from everywhere. They're not all school leavers, is the first thing to bear in mind. But a lot of them are. And I think the way she put it, and I stick by this, is that when you're recruiting graduates versus apprentices, what you'll probably get from graduates is people with a bit more analytical rigor, because they've spent 3 years, you know, reading stuff and being asked to regurgitate that and form arguments and do all of that kind of stuff, which is really valuable and really useful. And you might get somebody with 3 years life experience that maybe lived away from home. They've had to fend for themselves and kind of look after themselves for a few years that you might not get with people who are leaving school. But other than that, you're pretty much getting the same people. So as an employer, working with an apprenticeship provider, what you might want to do is you might want to try to work out what your apprenticeship provider is going to support with, what gaps they're going to fill, what they're going to do from a training perspective. Work at how you can fill those gaps yourself in terms of bringing people on and adding those training gaps in around the edges. Fast forward to today, obviously the business I'm part of has been sucked into this massive organization that exists in like 120 countries worldwide. But we now operate not at individual location levels, but as one business across the UK. We've got quite a significant advantage versus our competitors in the network agency space, in that we've got 6 UK locations that we operate out of in London, Stafford, Manchester, Newcastle, Leeds and Edinburgh, right? So we've got 6 talent markets that we can go into in order to be able to try to bring talent in and develop them. And what we've done now is recognizing that there's such a skills gap in the market. I was talking to a recruiter yesterday who was trying to sell me his wares, so he could be exaggerating, but he reckoned that he had, for every candidate, experienced candidate that he had, you'd have 10 to 15 jobs available that those people could go after. We are in a market. We've gone from a market where we felt like, you know, we could sort of get access to talent pretty much whenever we needed to it being a complete employees market that we're operating in. So we have to think radically about how we start to fill those gaps and start to build a bit more of a longer term strategy. It's how do we go and develop the next generation of talent within our industry? And that's what we've done. We set up the Dentsu Academy in November last year, which was designed to actually, on a reasonably industrial scale, build a program whereby we could bring entry-level people into our business, a mix of apprentices and graduates who are coming in cohorts in different locations around the country. We've built a fairly sort of rigid training program that we're bringing those people on, but ultimately that's matched against the kind of sort of training that Apprentify, you know, provides, one of our apprenticeship providers, so that those two things blend with each other, and then we literally put them on the job to learn the rest of the skills, and they develop through and start working with experienced teams of people within our business. And since November last year, we've taken on 75 people in the UK in various different locations onto that scheme, and it's proved to be a huge success. It was a bit bumpy to begin with, as these things always are, but we've got to a really, really strong place. And you know, apprentices are the lifeblood of that. We've completely, Paul said it, we've completely transformed our view of what apprentices can do for us and what apprentices can provide for our business. And I think, you know, moving forward, that's going to be the area that we continue to focus on investing in for the longer term. So yeah, I couldn't speak highly enough of apprentices. More than happy to answer any more specific questions anybody's got a little bit later on.
Brilliant, amazing.